Hello, heroes and Zargons. I am Alfred, and this is the Trials and Tribulations of Zargon, a series which details the many ways in which the Emperor's heroes foil Zargon and his minions in their plots to conquer the Empire. In it, we'll review published quests and any house rules or modifications I'm using to make the game more interesting and challenging. My heroes this campaign are played by a single experienced player, so they cooperate, share resources, and are wise to the wiles of Zargon. The tuning I've done to the quests reflects that. In this episode, we'll cover Quest 3, the Lair of the Orc Warlord. Mentor begins this quest by informing the heroes that Prince Magnus has ordered the Orc Warlord Ulag, who was responsible for the imprisonment of Sir Ragnar, to be sought out and destroyed. When Ulag is destroyed, the heroes will receive a reward of 180 gold coins to be divided among them. Any treasure found in Ulag's stronghold may be kept by the finder alone. This quest is mercifully short since Zargon's minions here are weak and the tricks he has to antagonize the heroes with are few. My house rules allow monsters to move through doors and introduce a wandering monster clock, but those only marginally increase the difficulty here. The board's layout is incredibly linear. Heroes enter the dungeon in the easternmost room of the northwest quadrant and must clear 2 of the 3 rooms in that quadrant before progressing to explore elsewhere. After these 3 rooms, they enter a hall and can proceed south into the southwest quadrant or north to explore the last room in the northwest quadrant. That room contains the Orc's armory, which contains only a staff. The southwest quadrant uses 4 of the 5 rooms, but again presents the heroes with no options for where to go. The heroes must proceed in a linear fashion through them. This structure ensures that the heroes have battled all but 2 of the enemies by the time that they reach Ulag. Hopefully, this will deplete their resources and make the battle with him more difficult. However, those rooms are not a particularly tall task, since the mandatory pre-Ulag enemies consist of 6 goblins, 5 orcs, and 2 Famir. Ulag himself has 2 body points, 4 attack die, and 5 defend dice, a solid upgrade, but not too difficult to overcome. His bodyguard, the Chaos Warrior, is arguably more dangerous, since he has 3 body points. The final room contains an empty chest guarded by a pit trap. This quest didn't present my heroes with much challenge at all. We blasted through the quest en route to a 3-quest evening. It does, however, present an opportunity to think about dungeon design and the goals of the dungeon. I'm excited to run this quest with my 5-year-old and see how he experiences it, because for a kid, I think the linearity might lead to exciting tension at the conclusion of the dungeon. The linearity of the quest is certainly designed to ensure some kind of a climax. For adults, however, part of the charm of the game is in the exploration component, and this dungeon affords very little of that. There aren't any real decision points for the heroes here. They'd best march forward and attack. My hero player's elf had recently acquired a crossbow, and that made the dungeon even easier, since he was pretty well guaranteed to maximize his attacks per round. Optionality is an important feature of a dungeon, but making pathing decisions is only meaningful if the heroes have or can gain some clue as to the organization of the dungeon. One way to do this is to think about room purpose and use expectations. If attacking a stronghold, there's probably a guard room and a choke point near the entrance. Perhaps there's some way to bypass it. To a certain extent, it's useful to lean into conventions in dungeon design. Put things where people would expect based on their understanding of how such a facility would be laid out in real life, or put things where people would expect based on the conventions of previous quests and the board itself. The central room is for boss fights. The 2x6 rooms are for jail cells. That sort of thing. I recently designed a 3-board dungeon where the heroes entered on both the top and the bottom. More on that in another video. The villain that the heroes were there to take out was in the center room of the center board. The heroes didn't know that, but it would have been a fairly good guess. And being able to guess that meant decisions about movement were more meaningful. If they got low on resources, they could beeline for the center room, make sure they accomplished their goal, and get out. While they were healthy, though, they could take chances exploring for loot throughout the dungeon. A second way to help heroes make decisions is to put visual or verbal cues in the dungeon itself. Perhaps there's a noise coming from a particular direction, or there's a monster in the hallway suggesting a more populated portion of the dungeon is that way. As Zargon, I feel that expectations are a great way to eliminate heroes. I like to lull heroes into complacency with cliches. Then, when I do surprise those expectations, the danger is more substantial. A second tenet of quest design is to design with the rules of the game in mind. There's a room in this quest with an empty treasure chest, and it contains a pit trap abutted next to the side of the chest. However, heroes do not have to move next to a chest to search it for treasure. If my heroes search for treasure without searching for traps first, in this case, I'd ask them, how do you approach the chest? And use the pathing that they give me to determine if they fall into the trap. However, rules as written, and published quests really need to expect players to use the rules as written, players can just search for treasure. This pit trap seems like a gotcha for the worst kind of people to leave a gotcha for. people who are still learning the rules. As Zargon, I prefer punishing the unclever to punishing the unwary. The final principle to good quest design, in my view, also comes from the treasure room, and that is that it is fun to find things, and there is often very little to find in this game. The lesson here is commensurate reward for danger. Unwary and unwise heroes should face uncommon danger, but those hardy enough to overcome it should be rewarded. Designers face a bit of a conundrum here because of the limited ways in which heroes can spend their hard-won loot. The game practically begs for Zargon to house rule some additional options. Game designers added some in subsequent quest packs through potions and mercenaries. However, my experience with players of all ages is that they want to see their heroes grow through equipment, artifacts, levels, or imperial privileges. These things are outside of the purview of the original game and take Zargon into the wild world of house rules. I've added a leveling system to my campaign, and I'll outline how it works in a subsequent video. Like and subscribe to be notified when it releases. For now, did I get the takeaways from this design wrong? Perhaps I'm not ruthless or cunning enough. Let's plot together in the comments below.